Okay, I'm going to give one more comment on the four sons, and then we'll go on. I said yesterday that there's an introduction to this passage. It says Baruch 4 times. Baruch HaMokel Baruch Hu, Baruch Shanasan Tov Yisrael, Baruch Yisrael, Baruch Hu. Now, it starts with Baruch HaMokel. Literally, those words mean, blessed is the place. But in fact, it's referring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the Creator. Why would you use the word ha-makom to refer to God? What would be the connection between those ideas? So I'll tell you the meaning, and then I'll tell you how it's derived. When you call HaKadosh Baruch Hu makom, what you're saying is, He gives the possibility of all existence. And I mean it exactly as I said it. In other words, the procedure of bringing the world into existence is a two-step procedure. I mean, you can subdivide it into as many as you like. But it's a two-step procedure. First, you have to create the possibility that there should be anything other than God. And then you realize that possibility. Those are two steps. And Mokom refers to the possibility of existence. He's the ground of all existence. And then, having created the possibility, he realizes the possibility. Why is that called Makom? Well, think about it. Everything in the physical world takes up space. So if there were no space, there couldn't be anything else. You could have an empty space. The fact that you have space doesn't mean that you have to have other things. Not doing relativity now. And even so, there are models. Gottleib found a model for an empty universe rotating, which sounds crazy, but that's what he did. In just the way that space is the ground of the possibility of all physical things, so calling Kodesh Baruch Hu Mokom is referring to him as the ground of the possibility of everything's existence. And this is why there's the famous expression, Ein ha'olam mekomo, Elohu mekomo shel olam. Or maybe it's backwards, the other way around. The world is not his place. He is the place of the world. So the world is not his place because, not being a physical object, he's not contained in space. But on the other hand, you say he's the place of the world. That doesn't mean that there's a super space. We're a 4-dimensional world and he's 16 dimensions or infinity of dimensions and we exist in his dimensions and so on and so on. That's dumb. No, it means that he plays the role of making this world possible. And that's what's being referred to here. Now the question will be, why 4 phrases? Well, there are 4 sons. Really? There are 4 sons. Well, obviously, when we refer to God as the place, meaning the ground of existence, we don't mean his ground of existence of only one of the sons, and the other sons somehow exist otherwise, or the other gods bringing them into existence? Certainly not. So it's got to go on all 4. We're saying, blessed is he who is the ground of the existence of everything, including all 4 of these sons. And then the question that will be asked is the ground of the existence of the wicked son also? So you start with the obvious observation, look, nothing can exist without his giving it its existence, including the wicked son. Why is he different from anything else? A table, a chair, a rattlesnake, or poison, it makes no difference. If it exists, it does because he makes it exist. That's true, but there's something else here. If you look at the verse, which in the Haggadah is described as the words of the wicked son, which is in the book of Exodus, chapter 12, verse 26, Shmos, Yud Beis Chavav, it says as follows, V'hayo ki yomru alechem b'neichem, it shall be when your children shall say to you, not ask you, they'll say to you. They're not asking a question, they're making a statement. Okay, there's a question mark at the end of the statement, but it's a statement, it's not a question. They're looking for an answer, what's sometimes called a rhetorical question. Ma what is this service to you? Now, the next verse goes on, V'amartem, which we don't say in our Haggadah, Zerach Pesach hu Hashem, asher posach al botei bnei Yisrael b'Mitzrayim, b'nakpos Mitzrayim, z'botei v'tzil. This sacrifice that we are offering is called the Paschal sacrifice to Hashem, who saved our houses in Egypt when he struck the Egyptians and saved our houses. Okay, so the child is seeing the sacrifice, and it's unusual, it's only once a year, it's also the details that he's not used to. He's like, I'll tell you why. This commemorates what happened on the 14th of Nisan, 100 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, commemorates that event when Hashem struck the Egyptian firstborn and he saved us. That's what you shall say to your child when he asks this question. And the people bowed down and prostrated themselves. Now, it's a little odd. These are instructions as to how you shall perform Pesach when you get into Eretz Israel, and you settle the land, you come up to the temple, you offer the sacrifice, everything. This is what you should do. And they're being told here in Parshas Bo what the holiday consists of and what they should do. Okay, and then they prostrate themselves after getting the instructions. Why did they do that? That's not the usual response to getting instructions. The Torah has at least 100 places where the Jewish people are given instructions and they don't bow down and prostrate themselves. Something happened here. Something happened here. They heard something in this. So Rashi says, said a minute ago. Pasuk Kaf Zayin. Vayikol ha'ab al besoras ha'geula ubias ha'oretz ubesoras ha'bonim she'yu lahem. Well, if you go back and look at the whole paragraph, you'll see that they were given news that they're going to be redeemed from Egypt. This parsha is given in Egypt yet. And it tells them that they're going to be brought to the land of Israel. Oh, those are good things. Definitely worthwhile, showing gratitude and joy about those things. And that's what prostration does. Oh, but there's a third thing. Another one, that is, besides abonim she'yu, oh, that they'll have children. We're gonna have children. Wow. Okay, down, bow down, prostrate. Wow, what a piece of news. We're gonna have children. So I think it's a Tzaddik who asked. First of all, everybody has children. An maybe there'll be individuals who don't have children, but a nation, doesn't disappear suddenly because there's no children. Number one. And number two, this verse, it says in the Haggadah, is a verse expressing the words of the wicked son. Should we put that into the verse? Should we put that into the Besorah, to the news that they're getting? And by the way, you're going to have wicked children. Oh, great! Bow down! Wicked children! Who could ask for more than that? Right. So that's a little strange that's what they're going to bow down and prostrate for on the news that they're going to have wicked children. Says the Pri Tzaddik, the Besorah here is that no matter how bad they get, no matter how badly they do, they will not be lost. They'll be there, and they'll say, and they'll exist, and in the end, they'll be redeemed. That's the third thing that they're bowing down for. And this is an expression of what I told you, that even though we don't speak to the wicked son, he's there at the Seder. We do not exclude him. He speaks his piece. Nobody shuts him up. Could you imagine Antifa letting him speak? No, you can't. No, we don't shut him up. He speaks. We react to the others, explaining the meaning and the danger in what he says. We don't talk to him because he's not willing to listen. But we don't cut off our ties to him. If he wants to be there, he could be there. So that's the part of what's, since the Kodesh Baruch Hu gave them their ability to exist, and he's also committed to them that they should be redeemed in the end. Now, there are two qualifications to this which have to be made. First of all, not everybody agrees to this sentiment. The Rambam in particular says that some people can become so evil that they cease to exist. Their souls cease to exist. They don't make it into the world to come. And not only the Rambam says that, the Ramchal, Kabbalist, is split in the Derech Hashem. He does follow the Rambam and says that some will cease to exist. In the Pachud, he says no, everyone will make it. So, and I've asked Ramchal scholars, and I have not gotten an explanation to how to deal with the contradiction. And then, this is only said about what period of time? After the Torah is given. How do I know that this is only said about the period of time after the Torah is given? Look back at what we say to the Rasha, to the wicked son, and prove to me that what I just told you can only be said to the time after the Torah is given.
Since pretty much the response is including that what Hashem did for me when He took us out of Egypt, and pretty much like talking about it in reference to us being already taken out of Egypt as opposed to still being there.
Nope. There's not much left. Try again.
What was the question again?
The question is, I just told you the idea that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who gives being to the wicked son, and Rashi is telling you that they expressed joy and gratitude on the news that they're going to have children, and the verse that they're talking about is a verse that's used to describe the wicked son. So the Pri Tzaddik puts it together and says the news that they're getting is that they're going to have wicked children, and ask, oh, you're getting wicked children, right? And you say, wow, that's wonderful. I have to show my gratitude and joy to God that I'm getting wicked children. It's a little puzzling, has to be explained. And the explanation is that there's a commitment that they'll make it. No matter how wicked they get, there'll be a redemption for them. None of them will be lost. Okay? Now I say, that remark that God is the support of the existence of the wicked, and the guarantee that the wicked will be redeemed, none of them will be lost, that has to be talking about after the Torah is given.
So before the Torah was given, it's possible that wicked people could have been lost?
Yes.
We lost a bunch of people.
Okay, that's true, but now tell me from the book. What does it say in the book? I know reading is somehow, it's not a video, but what does it say in the book?
It says that he took me out of Egypt, which means that if he left out of Egypt.
No! That's it. Yeah?
It literally says, he redeemed me there, and it tells to the wicked son that you would not have been redeemed.
He says if he had been there, he would not have been redeemed, doesn't it? So it means that before the Torah was given, it could be possible that someone would not be redeemed. It says that explicitly. So therefore, it can't be talking about before the Torah was given. And that means there's a big difference. It's giving the Torah not only a new set of responsibilities, but as we've spoken about on previous occasions, it elevated the Jewish people to a new level of reality, and that new level of reality has within it great responsibilities, but it also has a new connection with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, which according to some can't be ultimately broken. Ramban says no soul will ever be destroyed. No soul was ever destroyed. So there's a fundamental difference of opinion in different commentators about this. Yeah.
So is the statement to the wicked son that on the track that you're going right now, you won't be redeemed?
No.
Or is it saying that if you had been at Mount Sinai, you wouldn't have merited redemption based on your current level?
Not at Mount Sinai, if you had been in Egypt. If you had been in Egypt when everybody else was redeemed, you would not have been included.
Lost.
You're playing with that kind of fire. But the implication, according to the way the Pre-Tzaddik learns, is not that. And therefore, if you keep going down this road, you won't be redeemed, because there's no such reality. It's just that's how serious the thing you're doing now is, that had you been there, you wouldn't have been redeemed. They'll have to carry it over word for word to what's going to actually happen to them. Yeah? Okay, now up to the next paragraph. A little bit of Gemara in the Haggadah. This is real Gemara language and Gemara thought process. You might think that the obligation to talk about the Exodus from Egypt applies from the first day of the month of Nisan. You might have thought of that. That's all the Torah says. Tell the story and relive the story as we've explained it. But when? When do you do that? You might have thought that you start from the beginning of Nisan. Therefore, the Torah says, on that day. Meaning it's one specific day. Okay, this is elementary, but let's try it. How do the words on that day contradict the idea of starting from the beginning of Nisan?
Nisan starts at night.
I'm sorry, what?
Every day starts at night.
No. Day can be 24 hours. No, think again. Try to use just a little common sense logic, yeah?
When it says from the first day of Nisan, it doesn't say an end day, but when it says on...
I'm not hearing you. When it says the first day of Nisan, it what?
There's no end. It can be until the rest of Nisan.
Can be? Just can be?
It will be.
Why do you say will be? What word tells you it will be?
From the first day.
Start. You start from. Start from. Doesn't say on that day. You start from that day. If you start from that day, it means you're going to continue on, I don't know, a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, 4 months. You're starting on that day and going on. Now there's a verse that says on that day, the day that you do it on. So then start from that day can't be right. This literal reading, that's all. Literal reading with the logic of a 6-year-old. If it says start from that day, it's got to be more than one day. If the verse says on that day, there's only one day. So start from that day has to be wrong. It's a wrong shot. Fine. That's the first step. Now, next thing. Okay, there's a day. What day should that be? And it says, the expression, by the way, Father, why would you have thought the first day of Nisan would have been a time to start? Well, what's the Havamid, as we say in the Gemara? Because that's the day on which Moses started giving instructions to the Jewish people about the Exodus. And since the whole performance is supposed to be relevant to the original historical events, so your performance has to be pegged to something which you are commemorating. And since the initiation of the process of the Exodus started on the beginning of on Rosh Chodesh, so that would be a time to start, but not to end, because the process took 2 weeks. So you keep going and going on and on and on. That's why you thought that's a possibility. When the Torah says that on that day, it was only one day. So then it can't be a long extended process like that. Okay, now it says, well then, if there's going to be a one day, maybe it should be in the daytime. That means the Haggadah is already fixated on a particular day and wants to know which hours of the 24 hours can it be done on, right? Why would you think, what day would this be and what daytime would this be? What event do you know which might be a secondary guess as to when you should start the performance of telling the story because something very significant happened at that time? Well, how about the 14th in the afternoon? What happened in the afternoon of the 14th?
Gathering your stuff to leave, or
The Paschal sacrifice.
How about the Paschal sacrifice? And how about circumcision? To rather, not just packing up your stuff. Two gigantic statements that we are attached to Kodesh Baruch Hu, that we're not afraid of the Egyptians. we're slaughtering their totem animals, their religiously separated animals, And we're doing it in their faces. When Pharaoh said to Moses, when you want to go out, you want to have your sacrifice to your God, you want to have it in the Midbar, have it in Egypt. And he said, if we have it in Egypt, won't they stone us when they see us slaughtering the animals? So, okay, I'll add a footnote here, which is not well known. One of the commentators asks, now wait a second. Pharaoh's telling you to do it here, and you say, I can't do it here, because if I do it here, they'll stone us. Really? The plagues that you saw weren't enough for you to have confidence that the Egyptians will not have the power to stone you? So, Rashi says already. No, not that they're really going to do it, but they're going to want to do it. And they're going to be frustrated by their inability to do it, and we don't want to bring that frustration on them. Astonishing remark. We don't want to bring that frustration on them. That's why we want to go out into the wilderness. Won't see us slaughtering their animals and be pained by seeing their holy animals being slaughtered. So a fascinating thing. Anyway, here they're doing it in Egypt, in their faces. And circumcision is not a small thing. So I think that this would be a good time to tell the story. 14th in the afternoon. Oh, but that's wrong also. And the Haggadah proves it this way. The Torah also adds, the father should say, when he says what happened, he says, because of this Hashem did for me when I left from Egypt. Because of this. Ba'avur zeh. Now the word zeh in Hebrew and this in English can only refer to something that's present. It's a pronoun that refers to things that are present in front of you. Interesting, in English, that's the difference between this and that. This book has to be here. That book, the one I told you about last week, it's on my desk. You can get it from there. That can be absent, but this cannot be absent. Zeh in Hebrew is this. So if you say, Ba'avur zeh, for the sake of this you did for me, there's got to be something there in the environment, visible, present, that you're referring to when you say for the sake of this. What might that be? Well, Haggadah tells you. It's going to be matzah and mortar. That's written at a time when the temple doesn't exist, when you don't have the Paschal sacrifice. If the Paschal sacrifice were there, it would be matzah, Pesach, matzah, and mortar, all three of them. They have to be visible in front of you. They have to be on the table. See? And that's why it's got to be at night, because nighttime is the time when you have them on the table in front of you. Hooray! We now have our answer. To which you could object. Put them on the table in the afternoon. Why do you have to wait till night to put them on the table? You have a demonstrative, this. It's got to be in front of you. Put them on the table in the afternoon and say what you want to say. How do the words, for the sake of this, which is the demonstrative, which means it has to be in front of you, tell you it's got to be at night? See, that's a question. Question on the logic. When you'll be into Gemara more, you'll have these questions leap out at you. The words don't do the job. And the answer is this. Let's take the matzah. See, the matzah has to be on the table. What are we going to say? For the sake of this, God took me out of Egypt. You know why God took me out of Egypt? For crackers. Every spring we eat crackers. Round, hand-baked, very special crackers. Okay, the Sephardim have a dough. Fine. We have this very special bread. This is why he took me out. Do you know that there are crackers factories? Some of them start from Hanukkah, and some of them start from the end of Sukkot. They're baking matzahs and shipping them all over the world. That's why God took me out of Egypt. So there'll be crackers factories that will supply the world with crackers, right? Clearly, we're not talking about the crackers. So we're not talking about the crackers. What are we talking about? The crackers have to be on the table. The matzahs have to be on the table. That's the demonstrative. This. When I point to the matzah, what am I pointing to? The cracker? I'm pointing to the mitzvah. Pointing to the mitzvah of eating the matzah. That's only at night. The mitzvah can't be done in the afternoon. That's how you get to the conclusion that it has to be said at night. This is Talmudic reasoning. You want to see how it works? It's a very good example.
What's the word for that? Wasn't that also for that?
Not zeh. Zeh keli v'anveyu hayumarim be'etzba. They pointed out. No, zeh means this.
How do you say that though? Is there a word?
Hahu. HaSefer Ahu, that one. That's that.
In modern Hebrew also?
I think so. I don't think. I think is a what we call an indexical. It's got to be something that's present. Yeah.
So the reason why it brings up both matzah and maror is to not just, because if we just say just the matzah there, we could like say that all for the mitzvah the matzah, but if we have the maror there, it's for the procedure, which is also associated with the mitzvah, right?
I'm not. I don't know if we're on the same page now. I'm not hearing in your words what I'm talking about. We're not now talking about the instructions for them. We're talking about what's going to happen.
I mean to like allude more to like the actual like mitzvah of eating the matzah, with us pointing out that the maror is also there because it's part of the procedure.
Oh, I know what your distinction you're making. It's a mitzvah to eat the maror also. The original mitzvah, there's a mitzvah deraisa to eat all three. All three are required to be eaten. Now, today, we don't have the Paschal sacrifice. Since we don't have the Paschal sacrifice, we don't have a biblical mitzvah to eat maror either. It's only rabbinic. But he's now talking about what mitzvahs we have should be able to point to those mitzvahs by pointing to the substances we're going to eat. And if we're talking about our times, leave out the Paschal sacrifice, we will eat matzah, we will eat maror, even though matzah is deraisa. Maror is derabanan, but we will eat them. And the Paschal and the times of the temple, we would have had all three. But the point is that they're on the table and they carry the effect of the mitzvah at the time of the mitzvah, not before. Before they're just commercial substances. Yeah.
But they're also a symbol of that poverty before the time of the mitzvah. And so you might, I think your answer is far better, but you could say that he took me out for the sake of symbol of our poverty and our suffering, and that's why we were freed, and that doesn't necessarily require that you actually be able to then perform the mitzvah right after that.
As I started at the bottom. There's only one reason to do anything. That reason is that Hashem wants it done. There's no other reason to do anything. So you say, for the sake of the symbol, if God didn't tell you that you should have the symbol, then there wouldn't be any reason to do it. There would be any reason to do it. I'm not talking now whether it's a formal command. Nachas ruach. I know that He wants it. I know that He appreciates it and He wants it. I'm doing it for the sake of doing His will. That's something that's absolute, universal, and constant. I'm doing His will. Right? So what is it that I'm going to get out of this symbol of the affliction? Right? There's no mitzvah to have matzahs during the year and put them in a case and put a label. This is the way we ate in Egypt and so on and so on. I have no reason to think that there's any reason to do that. There's no one has ever done it. No one's ever considered it. The mitzvah to be done with the matzah is eating it. That's how you express the symbolism. Right? So there's nothing but this is a very important point. There's no reason to do anything other than that. Okay. Now we come to, it's another introductory paragraph. Yeah, this is also another piece of Talmudic reasoning. Mitchila, originally, in the beginning, sort of, our fathers, our ancestors, we should be able to write ancestors here, were worshippers of idols. But now, I don't know, the right ever present here, I don't think they wrote that before. Hamakom, it's again Hamakom, brought us close to His service. As it is said, now here we have a complex verse from the book of Joshua. Joshua spoke to the whole people. Thus has Hashem, God of Israel, spoken. Your fathers dwelt in olden times beyond the river, Euphrates. Who are they? Terach, the father of Abraham, and the father of Nachor, and they served other gods. And I took your father Abraham from beyond the river, and led him throughout the land, all the land of Canaan, and I multiplied his seed, gave him Isaac. Of course, Abraham had 7 other children, or maybe 8. And I gave to Isaac Jacob and Esau. I gave to Esau Mount Seir to possess it. And Jacob and his sons went down to Egypt. Okay. piece of history. Question is, what is this piece of history doing in the Haggadah? And the answer is that there is a disagreement between Rav and Shmuel what the content of the Haggadah should encompass. One says that it is the story of going from slavery to freedom, and the other says that it is a story of going from an ancient period of idol worship to serving Hashem. That's the difference of opinion. And we put this paragraph in here because no contradiction to anything else we're doing. Even if you thought that the mitzvah was to go from slavery to freedom, it wouldn't be forbidden to put this in. And the other one says you have to have it in. Now, let's try to figure out the idea behind each position. From slavery to freedom, that's what we're doing. We said that the 4 questions cited 2 symbols of slavery and 2 symbols of freedom, because this night, the night of the Seder, we are reenacting the transition from slavery to freedom. So of course, that's what's happening. That's what you want to tell the story of. Going from idol worship to service of God, well, that's certainly true. It's extra historical background on both ends, further to the past and further to the future. Does extra historical background increase your understanding of the events? Yes, it does, no doubt. But why stop there? Why not go back to the flood and go forward to the entry into the land of Israel? Why not go back to the creation and go to the coming of the Messiah? Who told you where to stop giving extra background? And don't tell me that it's too much, we couldn't do it. We could do it, we could summarize it, scale it down. No. What this one must be saying is, without this extra background, you don't understand the event of going from slavery to freedom. You don't understand it. This is necessary for minimal understanding of the event you're portraying. The extra would be just more background and give you deeper understanding. What's his point of view? His point of view is very simple. You go from slavery to freedom, so what? Why is that important? Why is that noteworthy? Why is that chosen to be recounted with such drama? What's the value of going from slavery to freedom? Answer, freedom is the ability to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's all it is. If it isn't that, it's worthless. So you don't know the point of the freedom, if you don't know the purpose of the freedom, if you don't know what the value of the freedom is, then you can't understand minimally the story of going from slavery to freedom. It's not just a historical event. Now, I have a whole shir on the nature of freedom. Maybe I'll give it before the end of the spot to prove it. But you have it in the 3rd paragraph of the Shema, where we are mentioning the exodus from Egypt. We spoke about this. You do this in Shul. And the last verse in the paragraph of the Shema, which is the paragraph of Tzitzis, is, I am Hashem your God, who took you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. That verse describes the purpose of taking us out, not just the fact of taking us out. I think that's one of the reasons why we mention the exodus from Egypt with an excerpt from the book of Numbers, whose subject is tzitzis. But we have the last verse, okay, but you might have thought you would mention the Exodus by a passage of the book of Exodus. Wouldn't it sort of fit? Exodus, you know, the Xer or something? No, we go to the Bamidbar and we take out the. One reason is because we're not just describing what happened, we're describing why it happened, for what purpose it happened. And that's the attitude of the one who says that you have to include going from idol worship to service of God, because without that, you don't understand the meaning, the significance, and value of the story of going from slavery to freedom.
I'm curious if there's a connection between being a slave and being an idol worshiper. Maybe you need to connect them to share that as long as you're a slave to someone else, or just a slave in general, it's as if you're an idol worshiper. Then once you become free, then you can serve Shem, maybe. I don't know. It's the deal.
That's a very interesting thought. I don't, well, as if is a flexible phrase, and it could be carry more content or less content. I'll just tell you the positive side and the negative side. It's a new thought for me, so I'm not really balanced on it. But we do have an explicit verse that says living outside the land of Israel is as if you're serving other gods. King David says, "You've banished me this day from the land of Israel," because he was running away from, I think it was when he was running away from Absalom, "to go to be among Goyim and serve other gods." So they said, well, obviously King David was not going to become an idol worshiper, but leaving the land of Israel, living outside, is in some sense like that. So there's the kind of expression that you need, the kind of expression you're looking for, where it would say, and if you're a slave, it's as if you're serving other gods. You don't have that, as far as I know, explicitly like that. But you do have something similar. The question is whether it's similar enough to make your point, where it says, if a Jew is a slave to another Jew, so this can happen in one of two ways. Either he's so impoverished that he can't pay his debts that he needs money. And of course, if a Jew is a slave to another Jew, it can't be more than 6 years. At the end of 6 years, he goes out automatically. And if the Jubilee comes in between, he goes out, and he gets hit and loses a limb, he goes out. And he can pay it off at any time, which means he's not really a slave. He's what's something called an indentured servant. He owes the master money. The master gave him money with which he paid off his debts. And now he owes him the money. And the contract is he's going to work off that debt. But if he inherits money, he can pay him off at any time and leave. So calling him a slave is a little strange. But what happens at the end of 6 years? So he's supposed to go free, but the Torah says he could exercise the option to stay longer. If the master gave him a woman to be his wife, and he has children, and he says, and the order of the verse is very, very instructive. If he says, "I love my master, and I love my wife, I love my children. Master first. This is good for me. Where I am is good for me. I don't want to leave." So there's a procedure whereby he can stay, which includes punching a hole in his ear. And there are all sorts of symbolism in that idea. And one phrase that's used is, here, a god was his master, and he went and bought another master for himself. Someone who's serving God, it's not appropriate that he should have another master other than God, who could tell him what to do and force him to do what he wants him to do. That's not appropriate. But it doesn't say it's like idol worship. It doesn't go that far. It just says it's inappropriate. Someone who has the opportunity to be serving the creator of the universe shouldn't create for himself some other master who's telling him what to do. It's a kind of dilution of God's mastery. That's not going the whole way to idol worship. So I would say that there's definitely an insult to the ideal relationship with God in being a slave, but and it doesn't say that about the initial period of slavery. Only when he contracts to stay longer, which would take him up to the Jubilee, it says about that. So it's not about the actual slavery, it's that he volunteered to extend it beyond its necessity. In the normal case, he got money from his master, he's working for the master, he paid off his debt. When it comes to the end of 6 years, it's over. They know it's 6 years, the debt is prorated over the 6 years, and he finishes 6 years over, and he wants to stay now when he doesn't need the money anymore. So, meaning that if he did it for the economic necessity, that's not considered an insult to God's mastery. That's a means by which you can pay your debts. But if you're going to go beyond that, so it's very diluted. The opprobrium, the insult in it is very diluted. There is an insult there, but it's very diluted. So I wouldn't see it going all the way to the conclusion that you want. Yeah.
Isn't it a general Jewish concept that as long as you serve others or look to others for help, you're like serving other gods? Or
Okay, this is where the word "like," really gets stretched. Like Maimonides says in the guide, the word "domeh" in Hebrew, "dmusenu," our likeness. There's a verse in one of the prophets who says, "I am like a pelican in the wilderness." And Maimonides says he's not saying that he has feathers. He stands at 1 foot, and he eats fish. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, I'm lonely. I'm lonely and isolated like a pelican in the wilderness. It means like can be possessing one characteristic in common and be utterly unlike in all the other ways. So, when you talk about if you serve somebody else, it's like idol worship. Well, yeah, it's like, but it's also very much unlike. It could be like and unlike at the same time. And I think that this is poetry, and it belongs in what they call scare quotes, two quotes on each side. That's what we say when we don't really mean it. I find it hard. You could not execute him for that. So you're worshiping an idol. We're warning you. It's a capital crime. No. That's not going to work. For serving other people, or worshiping money, or worshiping honor, and so on and so on. That's poetry, and it does what poetry does, not what law does. Okay, so that's the general reason why we have this paragraph in it. Now there are a couple of interesting things here in this paragraph. Joshua was giving them a thumbnail sketch of their history. Some of the commentators said, well, why was Joshua doing that? But at any rate, so now here he's talking to Jews, right? Thus has Hashem, the God of Israel, spoken. The God of Israel. Let's carry that through. When your fathers dwelt the olden times beyond the river, Terach, the father of Abraham, and father of Nahor, that's Abraham's father, and they served other gods. Okay, that's history. And I took your father Abraham beyond the river and led him to the land of Canaan, and I multiplied his seed. That's Ishmael, and 6 more sons after Sarah dies, and maybe a daughter as well, who aren't Jews. This is the God of Israel speaking. Listen, guys, think about your history. Your great-great-great-grandfather Terach served idols. And then I took Abraham, and by the way, I gave him 6 or 7 or 8 other children that aren't part of Israel. Why is the God of Israel saying that? The God of Israel. He's talking to the people of Israel. What do we care about those other children of Abraham? I gave to him Isaac, Jacob, and Esau. Esau? Who needs to know about him? He's not Jewish. He's not in the line. And I gave to Esau Mount Seir to possess it. So what? And Jacob still went down to Egypt. The simple answer here is, don't make a mistake when you talk about the Jewish God as if the Jews have a God, and he's the God of the Jews. And then, well, the Chinese could have a God, he'll be the God of the Chinese, and Assyrians could have a God, he'll be the God of the Assyrians, and there are all these gods and all these religions and so on and so on. No, the God of the Jews is the creator of the universe, all of it. If anybody thinks there's anything else in charge, they're just fantasizing. And God is, in that sense, the God of the Chinese, and the God of the Nigerians, and the God of people in Nebraska. He's the God of the whole universe. So when he's talking about the history of the Jewish people, speaking to Jews, he said, don't forget that I was responsible for all your cousins coming from Abraham, and I was responsible for Esau, who definitely is cut off from you, and I gave him his position in the world because I'm running everything. You as Jews have to know that in my special relationship with you, I'm the one who runs everything. It carries a universalistic implication, which sometimes people lose because they're identifying as Jews as they ought to, but they lose that implication. Okay, now comes a very almost paradoxical paragraph. I'm going to read it to you and point out an ambiguity, and then I'm going to leave it until tomorrow. What's today? Today's Wednesday. Yeah, until tomorrow. The Steve wrote a whole essay on this. Blessed is Baruch Shomer Havtach Hasol Yisrael. Blessed is the one who kept his promise to the Jewish people. Baruch Hu, blessed is he. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu calculated the end to do as he said to Abraham, Avinu, our father, in the covenant between the pieces. As it says, okay, here's what God said to Abraham on that occasion. He said to Avram, you should know for certain that your descendants shall be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and they shall serve them, and they shall treat them harshly 400 years. But I will also judge that nation, the nation that they shall serve, and afterwards they shall come out with great wealth. Now, this verse has what Noam Chomsky would call a syntactic ambiguity. Let's read it again. You should know for certain that your descendants shall be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and they shall serve them, and they shall treat them harshly 400 years. So let me abstract the form of the sentence here. You should know that A is going to happen, and B is going to happen, and C is going to happen, comma, pause, 400 years. Can you see that there are 3 different ways that you could read this sentence? What does the 400 years describe? Here's one way to read it. You should know that A and B and C are going to happen, and that process of A, B, and C will take 400 years. You could read it that way. But you could also read it this way. You should know that A is going to happen. When? I'm not telling you. Where? I'm not telling you. How long it'll be? I'm not telling you. A will happen. And then, after A, B and C will happen for 400 years. Or you could read it, A is going to happen, 1. B is going to happen, 2. And C is going to happen for 400 years. There are 3 different ways to read the 400 years. They're all consistent with the words in the verse. Okay, logic exercise. Which way of reading it would make the sum total time the shortest?
It all happens simultaneously within the 400 years.
Not simultaneously, right. Let's just say the first way I said it.
Yeah, within the 400 years.
If I say A, B, and C altogether will take 400 years, that's the shortest possible period of time. If I say A will happen, not telling you how long, and B and C will take 400 years, then it could be much longer because you have to take A into account separately. And all the more so if I say A and B are separate, then C is 400 years. So when God made this prediction, this promise, there are 3 different ways in which it could come true. So God has space here. The prediction is not completely precise. And this is why it says God calculated the end. He calculated the end because there were different ways to institute the end. And he chose one. He chose one for a particular reason rather than the other ones. And in fact, as we will see tomorrow, Mr. Hashem, he chose the shortest possible one, and they have to explain why, what was going on. What did we lose? Did we lose anything by getting the shortest possible one? But if you don't appreciate the ambiguity in the verse, then it's hard to know where the whole discussion is coming from. Okay.